Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. In this week's Market Watch, things are starting to settle down a little bit now that we've gotten past the Pro Tour, so you're going to see definitely some influence this week from what happened last weekend at the Pro Tour, but a lot of the big spikes actually occurred in last week's episode as people were speculating as to what was going to happen at the actual event, as well as seeing at that point most of day one and day two, the market already had a grasp on what was going on. So you're going to notice things being a little more docile this week when it comes to standard, but some interesting stuff going on in modern we'll definitely highlight for you as well. Quickly before we get started though, if you check out the description below, you'll see some links to our Amazon affiliate store. Great way to support the channel. All the cards that we feature in all our market watches are available through links there, and also a lot of sealed product and different things like Aether Revolt. So if you make any purchases, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. Always appreciated. Also, you'll be able to find links to our Patreon page, and that has recently been updated. So if you haven't checked it out in a while, check it out. We got some new rewards, some new goals, and all the details are there to tell you how to get one of these exclusive Heroes and Legends Angel tokens. This is a classic art token. They really came out amazing, so check that out on our Patreon page. All right, having said that, we got a lot of cards to talk about, so let's get into standard. And we'll begin by talking about the top 5 cards that lost value this week. Now, you're going to see a lot of cards here that are actually very good standard cards that are still seeing standard play, but they just didn't have the impact of the Pro Tour on camera that we've seen in past metas of standard. So because of that, you're going to see some decline in at least a few of these cards. Coming in number 5 is Torrential Gearhulk, down $1.21 to $23.69. Perfect example of what we're talking about here. Great card in standard. It's going to continue to be played in standard. It just didn't have a huge showing at the Pro Tour this weekend because this weekend was really about Mardu vehicles and the Saheeli combo and how those two decks interact with each other. That was the main story of the weekend. Control decks were out there. They just weren't in the spotlight as much. Having said that, the meta is going to shift drastically over the next few weeks because we had all these Mardu decks that performed so well in the Pro Tour. I mean, no doubt a lot of players are going to want to pick up those components to build those style of decks. But the issue is those decks did well in the Pro Tour because we were coming into an environment where the Saheeli combo just seemed so strong that a lot of pros just opted to go with a deck that was very good against it. And it was, and we saw that at the Pro Tour. The problem now is a lot of people are cold on Saheeli because it did not perform well during the Pro Tour, which means there's going to be less positive matchups for the Mardu vehicles decks. A lot of players are already going to start thinking about a counter to those decks, and that counter will probably be Golgari Delirium decks. When you start putting cards like Fatal Push and Ishkana in the deck against Mardu vehicles starts to have a really hard time. So I think that's what we're going to see over the next few weeks in the meta, and eventually things will stabilize. A lot of folks will start coming off the Mardu vehicle decks because they're not doing well against Golgari. They'll try to find a solution to those decks. In a lot of cases, control decks and even the Saheeli combo decks will start to creep back in. When that happens, Torrential Gearhulk will again be a pretty hot card, I think. Here's the deal, though. It's a Kaladesh. It is a mythic rare, but a lot of these have been opened due to the fact that it's from the Kaladesh set. So having said that, I do think this card settles in somewhere eventually between the $15 and $20 mark. I do think $23, $24 is still pretty high for this card where it stands right now considering the amount of packs that have been opened, but it's still going to be a very good card going forward. Coming in number 4 is Archangel Avacyn, down $1.25 to $16.96. Again, a card that did see a little bit of play over the weekend at the Pro Tour, but not a huge amount of attention on this card, so it's just down a little bit this week. Still a great card. Coming in number 3, Tezzeret the Schemer, down $1.36 to $10.23. So a lot of folks still trying to break this card and figure out how it's going to fit into the meta. Here's the deal with this card. It hasn't gotten there yet, but it will get there. I mean, think back to Chandra from Kaladesh, right? Or even Saheeli from Kaladesh. Folks just need a little time and for the meta to develop or maybe another set to come out to get the components to make the card really good. The raw power is here, and I think when we move on to Amonkhet and we have Bolas, and pretty sure Bolas will probably be in like Grixis colors, all of a sudden we may have some powerful support cards to go along with this card. So in that case, yes, this card will eventually have its day. That day is just not right now, and because of that, I think it will continue to slip a little bit before it finally finds its foothold. Coming in number 2 is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, down $1.43 to $18.48. Here's the thing about this card. It spiked a little bit before the Pro Tour due to the fact I think a lot of people just thought okay, Emrakul got banned, so just replace Emrakul with an Ulamog and we'll call it a day. But the metagame shifted just beyond that, and as we saw that with the Saheeli combo and the Mardu Vehicles decks, and Ulamog just didn't have a huge showing at the Pro Tour. It still sees play. It's still a great card. As a matter of fact, this sees a lot of play in Modern right now. Great option for Tron decks as well as some Eldrazi decks out there. This has even seen Legacy and even Vintage play at this point. So this card will always have a home. There's no doubt about that. The thing that's awkward about this card, though, is so many packs of Battle for Zendikar have been open. It's going to take a real long time before this card can really gain a foothold financially. So having said that, yes, this card will drop a little bit. I think it will continue to drop. I could see this getting down to the $12, $15 mark and kind of sitting there for quite some time. Over time, it will eventually increase if there's not a reprint, but there are a lot of copies of this out there to digest. Coming in at number 1, Saheeli Rai, down 232 to 1926, and no surprise here, I just kind of mentioned it a few moments ago. Basically, these combo decks got destroyed at the Pro Tour this weekend due to Mardu Vehicles, and it kind of is what it is. You know, it's still a great deck. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be a part of the standard, at least until Amonkhet comes out. But it's going to be a very flexible meta, I think. At times, the Mardu Vehicles decks are going to dominate, and other times they're going to diminish a little bit, and these decks will start to rise back up again. So don't count this card out at all. But again, a lot of Kaladesh has been open. I think $20 is a tad expensive for this card. I do think it will continue to drop a little more before it stabilizes. All right, let's move on to the top 5 standard cards that gain value this week. Probably not a lot of surprises here. I mean, these are going to be cards that performed really well in the Pro Tour and are becoming kind of our new standard staples. Coming at number 5, Kalatas, Trader of Get, up 31 cents to 20.80. Now, this isn't a huge increase for this card, and talk about a card with lasting power. Seems like no matter where the meta goes, this card is hanging in there. And there is a little uptick in interest, I think, this week, because there are some players already thinking about going a little heavier into Golgari colors to combat the Mardu Vehicles decks. Coming in at number 4 is Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, of 59 cents to 26.29. And this is a card that has players' confidence behind it. No matter where the meta goes, this card seems to hang on, right? It showed up from day one, basically, in the standard meta, and it continued on. It made it into things like Blue-White Flash when the meta started to shift a little bit. Most recently, of course, we've seen it in Vehicles decks. So this card just feels like it's not going anywhere, and it's also seen play in other formats, which means it does have some longevity beyond standard. Even though a lot of packs of the set have been opened, this card's still hanging out around $25, $26, $27. That's quite a feat for a Battle for Zendikar card, but this card certainly can back it up with its power level, and I do think at some point it will start to decline a little bit as players that continue to want to pick up copies get copies of this, and there are a number of copies out in the marketplace, but at the same time, it does have some interesting long-term value considering the amount of play it has been seeing. Coming in at number 3, Spire of Industry, up 64 cents to 5.05. Probably no real big surprise here. I mean, basically, we have 4 color decks right now in our standard metas, so you're going to need cards to enable those type of strategies. This is the perfect card to do so. It's going to be a staple in standard for its entire lifespan, I have no doubt. And as a matter of fact, I think we'll see at least a light multicolor theme in Amonkhet. I mean, we know Bolas won't be multiple colors, so that could carry on to some other cards as well. Coming in at number 2 is Scrap Heap Scrounger, up $1.14 to $4.25. Yes, this is a Kaladesh card. It's a rare. There's a lot of copies out there, but it did have a great showing this past weekend at the Pro Tour. This card has been a great aggro card really from day one. We've seen it in like the Golgari aggro decks most recently, stuff like that. However, we saw it quite a bit this weekend in those Mardu Vehicles decks, and it had a lot of camera time. Coming in at number 1, Heart of Kirin, up $2.28 to $22.99. Of course, last weekend during the Pro Tour, this card saw a huge spike, key component to the Mardu Vehicles decks, which of course were all over the place. However, the meta is going to adjust now, and this card actually, even though it's up this week, has already started to see a decline in the last probably 48 hours or so. I think we're looking at the peak of this card right now. It's a staple. It had a huge upswing of attention last weekend, and it's still going to be a great card. Don't get me wrong. It's going to see lots and lots of play in the standard meta going forward and probably throughout its lifetime in standard. However, I do think we're going to see that the Mardu vehicle deck has a weakness, and we're going to start seeing that this week, next week, and it's going to cause a lot of people to move on to the next hot thing. And this card will go down a little bit. I see it settling in around maybe $15 to $18, kind of sticking around that price range for a while. All right, let's move on to Modern. Now, you're going to see some interesting things this week in the Modern market. First off, we've been talking about the Pure Steel Paladin deck for a few weeks now. There's definitely still going to be an influence on both sides of the spectrum from that deck. Also, we're getting closer and closer to Modern Masters 2017. So, you know what that means. There's going to be a certain softness in some of these staples in Modern because players don't want to pay $50, $60 for a card right now that could perhaps turn around and get reprinted in a matter of weeks, right? So a lot of people are going to be a little hesitant to invest in certain cards at this point, and you're going to see that reflected here. So let's jump in with the cards that lost value this week. Coming in number 5, Noble Hierarch, the Modern Masters 2015 version losing 273 to 5681, where the Complex version lost 276 to 6043. Perfect example of what I was talking about. This is a great staple. It's fantastic in Modern. It's fantastic in Legacy and Vintage as well. Players want this card, but everyone's going to wait just a little bit. There's a high probability, hopefully, that this will get a reprint in Modern Masters 2017. Coming in number 4, Pure Steel Paladin, down 279 to 1499. So this card spiked pretty hard the last few weeks. A lot of people have been trying to brew this deck, want to see it work out, make it to a tier 1 deck. Not sure if we'll get there yet. It hasn't put up that real big finish that everyone wants to see. And because of that, a few people I think are already starting to jump off the bandwagon for this particular deck. I don't think it's had enough time yet to kind of get there, and I do want to watch it over the next few weeks to see if it can make it. But at least right now, especially coming off the back of the big spike we saw on this card over the last few weeks, it is starting to come down a little bit. Coming in at number 3 is Crucible of Worlds from Fifth Dawn, down 312 to 5620. Again, a very expensive card that potentially could be reprinted in Modern Masters 2017. Now, here's the deal, though. This isn't really a Modern staple, so perhaps WotC will hang on to this card for maybe a future Eternal Masters. But at the same time, there's a chance it could show up. I mean, I think Wizards has really been trying to give players a lot of good reprints to work with recently. And the fact that Modern Masters 2015 fell a little flat for some people, I'm sure they're going to try to bring the brand back up to greatness. So I think we're going to see a lot of big cards in this set coming up. So because of that, maybe it does make it in there. I guess we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Coming in at number 2 is Mox Opal, down 438 to 5177. Probably not a huge surprise due to the fact that it spiked really hard last week, and you kind of expected a little bit of a backlash after that spike. Secondly, it's a card that could show up in Modern Masters 2017, so again, players are going to be a little hesitant to make a big investment at this point. It is another card that is one of the key components to the Pure Steel Paladin deck, which, as we've seen, is maybe a little bit softer this week than it has been in past weeks. But also, don't worry about this card because it's still a fantastic card in decks like Affinity. It shows up not only in Modern, but also Legacy and Vintage. So this card isn't going to decline rapidly or anything like that. Don't panic and sell all your copies or anything. This card will stabilize, and depending on whether it gets reprinted in Modern Masters 2017, it's still going to hang out easily around the $40 to $60 mark. Coming in at number 1 is Karn Liberated from New Pyrexia, down 472 to 5053. We saw this card spike over the last few weeks, and that's really due to the fact that when Gitaxian Probe was banned a few weeks ago, it really meant mid-range decks are going to become stronger in the format. A good foil to mid-range decks, of course, is the Tron deck. So you saw a lot of people buying into Tron. Even though this card is going down this week, don't read too much into that. I mean, yes, it could be in Modern Masters, but you're going to see kind of the epilogue to the story in just a second. All right, let's look at the cards that gained value this week. Coming in at number 5 is Brushland, 9th edition version, up $1.11 to $13.47. So the 10th edition version has been going up over the last few weeks again, and now the 9th edition version is starting to follow, and that's pretty normal. Coming in at number 4 is Sigil of Distinction, up $1.18 to $2.99. Another card that is actually, I guess, kind of new tech, even though the deck itself has still been evolving, but kind of new tech that people have been looking into for the Pure Steel Paladin build. Coming in at number 3 is Karn Liberated. Imagine that, from Modern Masters 2015. So this one's up $1.48 to $50.57. And what we're seeing here really is just the value of the two versions of this card getting closer together. The new Pyrexia version really was out way too far ahead of the Modern Masters version. When that became a little too expensive, folks just went ahead and picked up the Modern Masters version. So what you're seeing now is just a trend to bring this one up and the other one back down. So no real surprise here. Still a very strong card in the meta. Coming in at number 2 is Doubling Season, up 270 to 62.49. This card was super hot in November and December when the Commander 2016 products came out. This was a no-brainer upgrade for Breed Lethality, which has become an incredibly popular product. Very hard to get your hands on a Breed Lethality deck at this point. But if you can, Doubling Season is another card you'll want to pick up, and that's a pretty expensive endeavor right there if you're trying to do it. But having said that, it's interesting because this card went down as people started to move on and the hype from that product started to diminish a little bit. But here it is ticking back up again. Don't underestimate just how much of a fan favorite card this is. And coming in at number 1, the big story of the week, Chalice of the Void. Huge spike in the last 48 hours here. Modern Masters version up $23.74 to $70. The Meriden version up $27.36 to $72.70. This is crazy. All right, so here's the deal. What happened here is the question. And I'm trying to kind of piece it together. Here's what I think happened. This card is a perfect foil to Pure Steel Paladin. If you have that in your sideboard against Pure Steel Paladin, you're probably going to have a pretty good Game 2 and Game 3, right? So I think a lot of players that didn't want to buy into the Pure Steel Paladin hype decided to maybe play it safe and pick up this card just to have on hand in case they need to start putting it into their sideboard. Because of that, the quantity of cards available, especially in the big marketplaces like TCG Player and stuff, started to diminish. And I think at some point, somebody jumped on that knowledge and started to buy out what was left. I can't imagine that there isn't at least some market manipulation behind this kind of spike. This is just too fast and too much of a spike for there not to be. As a matter of fact, this spiked so quickly that you could actually go on TCG Player and pick up a foil copy or the invention for cheaper than you could get the regular copy. So that's really kind of the market having a hard time adjusting. The spike was that fast. And I think a couple things are going to happen here. First off, this is the peak. This card isn't going to go much higher than what we're looking at right now. So if you have extra copies, yeah, this is probably a real good time to sell them, right? If you don't need them for anything. Here's the deal though. Now that this has spiked this hard, a lot of people are going to dig through their binders, find copies of this, and start putting them out there on eBay and such. And more copies are going to be introduced into the marketplace, and the price is going to start slowly coming back down. I mean, there's going to be a backlash. Whenever you see a spike this big, there's going to be a backlash. And if there is a buyout going on, or even if it's just a small buyout, those cards are eventually going to be reintroduced into the marketplace, and the value of this will start to come down. You could argue that the card was maybe a little undervalued, slightly anyway, to what it should be, and it probably won't go all the way back down to where it was 48 hours ago, but at the same time, it's not going to stay up at the $70 range. And again, there's a good chance this could show up in Modern Masters 2017. That could be very interesting. All right, let's talk about Legacy. Legacy is a little bit slower this week. There's not too much going on. A lot of the cards that spiked over the last couple weeks just starting to come back down again. So we're just seeing a back and forth. And we'll begin with the cards that lost value. You'll notice a lot of the unlimited cards that were hot a couple weeks ago are just coming back down now. Coming in at number 5, Unlimited Volcanic Island, down 1262 to 434.26. Number 4, Underground Sea, Unlimited, down 1496 to 530. Number 3, Howling Mine from Unlimited, down $15.60 to $69. This card was up to like $80 a couple weeks ago. Just goes to show you just how turbulent really this Unlimited market is right now. Coming at number 2, Unlimited Wrath of God, down 1958 to 2552. Really big percentage of its card value down this week. And finally, number 1, Unlimited Bayou, down $30.43 to $251.07. All right, let's look at the cards that gain value this week. Again, a lot of the usual suspects. Coming at number 5, Mishra's Factory. This is the winter version from Antiquities, up $7.51 to $87.49. This is one of the more hard to find variants of the card. Coming at number 4 is Nether Void, up $8.46 to $291.50. This saw a buyout a number of months ago now, and it really stabilized back down, but I think now that it's more in a quote-unquote affordable price range again, some folks are starting to pick it up just because they saw what happened recently with the spike. Coming in number 3, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Val, up $19.12 to $1,255.90. Coming in at number 2, Island of Wak Wak, up $26.04 to $108. That's a pretty big increase for this card in 1 week. I have been saying, though, to try to pick this up if you can, because a few months ago, it was down to like $50, $60. It was very, very affordable. It's just one of those Arabian Nights rares that's just kind of iconic and has interesting art. A lot of collectors get drawn to it. So I think that this is a card that has potential. I do think it will come down a little bit. This is a very big spike, and it's going to see a little backlash, and it probably will start to decrease over the next few weeks again. I wouldn't be surprised to see this on the top 5 cards that lost value next week. But having said that, overall, I think this card is still gaining momentum. And coming in at number 1, Force Field from Unlimited, up $39.18 to $185. So here is an Unlimited card that is going up. And I mean, there's a couple things going on with these cards. First off, I think a lot of collectors are picking them up because they're rare. I mean, rare cards go up in value over time, right? And you're going to see that from Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and even into Legends. Those are the rarest cards in Magic. So a lot of folks are just trying to pick those up. The 93-94 format is also a thing out there. So some players do pick these cards up to actually play with them. So that is going to add a little bit of an increased interest, at least for some people. So combine those two things, and yeah, you're going to see an interesting kind of turbulent market sometimes when it comes to sets like Unlimited. All right, having said that, that's the Market Watch for this week. We will be back early next week with a special edition of the Market Watch. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.